Hello everyone, this is my treatment presentation for the movie The Reckoning. Now, our main ideas for this movie is a horror genre, and this project, obviously horror based, is going to have some dark overlays, it's going to have a sort of dingy mood, and the actors involved will be dressed appropriately. Our current ideas are sort of a man being chased and abducted after finding a secret out which he shouldn't. That linking into the title of The Reckoning, the sort of things coming together, sort of biting people where they shouldn't, and the sort of idea that sort of your past actions are going to come and bite you in the future. Now, the current ideas I've got for inspiration are some sort of horror-based movies, and a sort of opening scene with being very mysterious. We've got our main character Arthur, who's going to be sat in a room sort of working on something to find something out, and then he's going to have to abruptly leave. So I've taken inspiration from a few projects like Friday the 13th, where the opening is POV based, where you're in the eyes of the perpetrator and then you see the attack happen. Other projects like Stranger Things, where you've got a character who is being chased again by something you don't see. And also Jaws, with the shark not being seen until later on in the middle of the movie. Now all these things are going to culminate together in our project and sort of move forward. We're going to use a lot of POV shots and things like that within the project. So overall, a sort of dark and horror sort of genre established through these conventions and these sort of ideas which we've been researching.
This is the mood. The mood I want to establish is a dark one, and where the audience feel uncomfortable, and overall feel the anticipation of what's about to happen, and this will entice our audience for the process and make them feel intense and all that. During the sequence, I may include a planning board where we see a villain plotting over something, so as the audience, they're anticipating their action for what's about to happen. During this, I'll be including the shots with titles and old scenery plays.
Yeah, so our target audience, we've been looking at we've done some primary and secondary research into this for our project. And what I've established that our age bracket is going to be a sort of 25 to 34 range, which is, and also in the A to B social category. Now, we've looked at this to basically see that this is going to be the biggest impact for our project, and the idea that movies such as this have succeeded really well in these genres. I've been looking at different projects such as Friday the 13th, such as the movies, and other movies such as this, which have done really well. And I looked at a sort of February to March release date, because it seems they've done really well in the box office during those times. And overall, it just seems that horror movies which are sophisticated, such as this one, seem to just work well with this social bracket, seeing as possibly a more wealthy background sort of resonates with this, and a sort of more sophisticated storyline really works out in projects such as this. Our overall plot and the shots we're going to be using. Now, as I said, we're going to have Arthur, our main character, to be sat in a room in the OVR at Shiplake, and he's going to be planning over something. I'm going to use a range of high-key shots from different sides of the room to establish the sort of area and establish shots. And the high-key shots are going to give the idea of like a sort of small character, and the idea they're not super important and slightly vulnerable. Now, I want to use a sort of shallow depth of focus as well when studying our main character, so we don't see the background, as well as sort of that enhancing the idea that they're sort of, you don't really know what's going on. We also have looked at shots from outside of the room, which is a sort of, again, as I mentioned, a POV shot, which will be giving the idea of the perpetrator looking into a room. And as I said, we have been looking at the shot from Jaws, where you see the shark sort of swimming up towards the woman, and there's the shot of Will Byers at the beginning of Stranger Things, where you see him on the road. And these sort of POV shots are going to help enhance our project and its sort of meaning. Now, another shot we plan to use is a POV shot from places such as bushes and up in trees. Now, we've seen this in many other films where you're in the eyes of the perpetrator, like I mentioned in Friday the 13th, which is going to really help to establish a meaning. And as mentioned, we're going to use some high key shots with a walking sequence, which is going to allow us as the audience to be seeing Arthur, our character, from different shots and different areas, which is overall going to sort of enhance the idea he's a sort of vulnerable, small person. Now, costume and mise en scène, do you want to?
The costume which we'll be using for this, for our main character, Arthur, will be wearing a school uniform with a black back on his back, and Stanley allows us, as the audience, to see him as a schoolboy, which will play into the movie. Also, the main plot line where the boy is abducted into a town, and we, as the audience, have to find out what happened to him. The overall mise en scene is a dark one, and the costume will be dark, and I will convey a sense of doom and darkness with my shot choice.
Now, we've created a mood board here, which we can see different shots used. As I mentioned, the shot of Will Byers, and you've got ideas of light with darkness around it. Now, the idea I hope to create there as well is you've sort of got a concentrated, which will be matte. So you've got a concentrated shot, and then your surroundings, you're unsure of what's happening around him. So that's giving the idea that in the darkness there can be anything, and that's leaving up to the imagination of the audience, which we have seen has proven really well in other media projects. Also, some overlays here, which we plan to use with sort of fake money shots on the table, which is going to be overlaid with our sequence at the beginning. Now, that's really going to enhance the idea of there's something going on which we as the audience are unsure about. And yeah, an overall dark and sort of dingy mood is going to be established. Now, the function of this scene is going to overall just sort of tee up our project. Now, as I said, we're going to have Matt in this room, and he's going to be moving out bit by bit. And overall, we're going to establish our character base, we're going to establish our sort of plot line and our perpetrator, our antagonist and protagonist. So basically, as we move out, it's established that Matt is he is the antagonist and someone who is being sort of taken advantage of in this scene, which is going to establish a hierarchy, and that will sort of play into later in the movie, seeing as the plot line of later on in the movie is going to be of an abduction, and the fact that these people are trying to find the same people that have abducted Matt, our character. Now, overall, this is a sort of project we've seen many times before. To name a few, there's the recent TV series Reacher, which is based off another sort of murder happens, and then the entire crux of the program, you're working out who has done this and why it has happened, which is a sort of, again, plays really well in the Hollywood scene. Now, that is something we hope to replicate. Our shooting locations, as seen, we're using the OVR, which is going to be the office and the sort of library area, which we're going to start in. Then we're going to move onto the front drive, where we're going to have some establishing shots of the scenery and area, and the boathouse drive, so moving down towards the river, which is going to be towards the end of the scene where the sort of perpetration or the abduction's going to happen. Overall, skip width will be used a lot for our staircase shots and for our library scene. The Everett back drive with the shooting sequence of POV shots and Matt walking away, and the lunch hall as Matt exits the old Viking room within Shipley. Now, all these locations we've scouted extensively, taken some shots to see if these are going to work in our project, and we overall seem they sort of work together really nicely in this sort of create a dark, moody tone, which I think is really going to help us in this project. Now, just to sort of wrap it completely up, overall this scene is to establish a dark, moody tone for our later project. We're setting our plot lines up, we're making sure our audience is established and that they're enticed to watch the rest of the movie, and it's overall just going to be dropping our audience in the action, and it's going to be making them work things out as they move forward, which is really, I believe, one of the best ways to start a movie, because if a movie's going to start really slow, the audience isn't going to be super engaged. So we want to capture our audience's engagement really quickly and establish that with a range of really interesting shots and sort of break a few dimensions, hopefully, and overall use different like POV shots, high key shots, shallow focus, and sort of show our different sort of understanding of the media concepts. And overall, we've discussed we're going to look at our audience, we're going to release that at the same time, we're going to make sure they're established. And overall, this project is hopefully going to give us some really good experience. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Before you guys sit down, any questions from the audience? Will.
Why won't you release it more towards Halloween?
Because we believe this is like a more sort of adult-based, because obviously the horror genres are very sort of large scale. You've got sort of goofy things at the one end of the spectrum, like Friday Night at Freddy's, where that's a very sort of colourful, goofy movie. And then you've got things more at the other end of the spectrum, like Friday the 13th, which is a more sort of highbrow audience per se. And I've done some research into sort of release dates, and it seems that that's when people who are working in these sort of sectors seem to have the most time to watch movies such as this. And that is sort of when movies like this are released usually, which is going to really resonate at the box office and like revenue patterns.
Okay. Why do you think genres like horror and thriller are so all-encompassing? Why do they maintain their popularity with these audiences?
Well, I would say because it's such a broad genre, I didn't touch on that, but the fact that, as I've just mentioned, you can have one end of the spectrum or another, and that means you're encompassing a wide variety of ages, social groups and social status, which is really meaning that you can entice people at the really young end of the spectrum or the older one, which means that Hollywood also have the breadth of field to be able to create projects and issue projects which are going to help this audience and sort of appeal to that many people.
Okay.